The wings carried whispers of distant lands and stories untold, as they swept through the high alpine passes that stretched like fingers across rugged landscapes towards sun-drenched Africa. Among these tales wandered a young scout named Malchus from Carthage city, not far removed by sea yet worlds apart in climate and spirit. His dark eyes mirrored both an unyielding determination and the unease of men who sought to conquer realms beyond their own, while his heart carried echoes of home that reverberated with each gust through mountain crags. His journey began under a sky veiled in grey hues as dawn kissed half-lit peaks goodbye. It was here he found himself at the backbone of an unprecedented movement, an army led by none other than General Hannibal, carrying within its ranks creatures that wrought with ancient might and power. These were elephants, beasts from lands afar, whose footsteps would soon tremble through European soil as a declaration against Rome's grandeur. Malchus had witnessed the planning of this colossal endeavour at Carthage's council table, strategies wrought in whispers and clandestine glances, where General Scipio was but an unborn name to those who dared dream beyond their famed city walls. Now here he stood amidst his own armies, foot soldiers, as they trudged upward through the Alps, with eyes fixed on Horus 01D30, 2578 ed goals, and hearts heavy with uncertainty, for it was said that only gods could endure such a trial. By nature itself these men were not gods. He often found himself alone in thought as he observed his troops' weary faces, the cold knit at their cheeks like invisible foes lurking just beyond sightlines, and felt more than heard within the confines of frost-laden valleys where even time seemed to pause, held back by ice. Despite this alienness, there was camaraderie among them, brothers in arms whose souls were threaded together through shared purpose yet divided apart, like shadows under foreign stars, glowing gleam amid the mist that served as both veil and shroud for their passage to a destiny written not on parchment but upon eternal stone. The young scout mused over how his people, once rulers of trade across these very routes, now trod with warriors' boots, or curious juxtaposition that seemed as much about survival as conquest, a city-state refusing to be subdued by Rome's iron fist. The sheer audacity struck him. How could men from Carthage, whose might was measured in ships and wealth of the sea rather than steep ascents on jagged mountain-sides? Yet here stood General Hannibal, a man who had embraced this gamble with a daring that bordered madness. Malchus pondered upon his own role within these ambitious undertakings, knowing well the gravity of what they sought to achieve. It was not simply war, but an act of defiance against Rome's insatiable thirst for dominion over all Mediterranean lands, or sentiment that even now rang like a clarion call in his bones. His thoughts often wandered back home, where he could almost smell the salt on Carthaginian windmills and hear children reciting tales of ancestral strengths unbroken by external forces or time's relentless march forward. Those memories clung to him as a comforting shroud against this foreign cold. As night approached, bringing with it a chill that seeped into bones, and cloudy skies overhead turned the world above them darker than they had dared hope for, a celestial blanket embracing their ambition in its unfathomable expanse without end or beginning. Malchus felt this darkness was not just physical but metaphorical, a void where fears and doubts lay interred beneath the weight of expectation upon his young shoulders to carry forth tales back home if ever he lived or perished, as many believed they might in these unforgiving conditions that seemed hellish enough even for gods. He closed his eyes against this ceaseless night, allowing himself a moment's respite from reality where dreams could soar free of the encroaching frost or fear. Malchus knew that amid silence and solitude a journey had begun, not just with feet that bore him through lands unknown, but within heartstrings pulled taut by purpose unwavering as daylight's return promised further trials ahead. Upon these mountains veiled in secrets, Malchus found himself in a secluded nook beneath an ancient oak tree that whispered secrets of olden times and resilience to those who would listen closely enough for testament, perhaps, for his own journey had only just begun amidst the rugged beauty surrounding him. The air was crisp with autumn's touch when he first arrived at this mountainous refuge, where history seemed as tangible as the earth beneath his feet, and stories wound through every crevice of rock face like ivy on an ancient ruin, a place named after its guardians, those who had sought solace here long before him. The night was a tapestry interwoven with silver moonbeams that filtered down from the summer sky. It painted Malchus's C015 ed in hues of mystique and shadows as he gazed upon them reflecting on his face, which wore lines like constellations traced by history itself. The oak tree offered its branches to him with a silent invitation for Resta's sentinels standing guard over tales untold that beckoned through the rustling leaves and murmured winds carrying echoes of yesteryear's glory, each note resonating deeply within his heartbeat as he settled down beneath it. His thoughts drifted to Carthage, a place etched into history with prideful tales that danced across generations like flames in a bonfire under the night sky. Here, where women were revered and strength was celebrated, their voices carried through time even as empires rose and fell. The salt-laden breeze seemed to carry fragments of those stories from afar, a distant ocean's briny kiss upon his nostrils, reminding him that while he stood in this foreign land now, the essence of home lingered like a lingering perfume on ancient cloth or buried treasure beneath layers of dust. With each breath drawn into Malchus's chest came another note, from an ancestral symphony or harmony played out through blood and spirit across continents that spanned time itself, binding him to these mountains with unseen threads woven by fate's own hands. In the hushed silence of this mountain sanctuary beneath stars obscured no longer since dawn's approach promised an endless expanse of light upon which new stories would be etched in memory and stone alike, when he awoke to meet them once more with eyes that saw further than sight alone could reach. Amidst the quietude, Malchus found solace as his fingers traced patterns on bark. They formed symbols known only within these sacred grounds or secret language of thoughts between him and nature itself, where each groove held significance beyond physical form or mere decoration, but served instead to remind one man that he was never truly alone when surrounded by the whispering spirits who had come before. A subtle warmth suffused his bones, as if Mother Earth herself enfolded her son in a protective embrace, assuring him against cold's persistent grasp and fostering within this refuge an inner flame of courage that flickered with each passing moment until it burnt bright enough to dispel the shadows encroaching upon his thoughts like weeds attempting to choke out fledgling blooms in a meadow. As he lay back against roots intertwined beneath him, Malchus felt an uncanny kinship between their gnarled twists and knots or bond forged by time's relentless march forward yet immutable within his own spirit, that sought solace here on this secluded mountain top where tales of ancestral might thrived despite centuries' ceaseless flow. Here he would find himself as much a part of history itself. Each step upon these ancient stones was another verse added to the ballad etched into every face worn by weather and memory alike, a story without beginning or end that continued through him until its melody reached beyond this world where echoes transcended mortal ears alone. The night receded like a tide retreating from shore, leaving behind only footprints upon the earth as testament of his passage. Malchus found himself entranced by visions that materialized before him within dreamscapes unmarred by fear or despair, a realm where fantasy and reality melded seamlessly like watercolors bleeding into one another on canvas, creating shades hitherto unknown to human eyes. Here he encountered figures of legend whose stories coursed through his veins with every heartbeat. These were not mere echoes, but embodiments that inspired him beyond measure a reflection both within and without, as they shared wisdom passed down from ancestors who had themselves traversed paths illuminated by starlight, guiding souls towards amidst a tapestry of stars that wove patterns across an indigo sky and whispers in every rustling leaf. Chapter 3 unfolded like a gentle stream finding its way to tranquil waters, an endless journey punctuated by the soft crunching sound beneath feet on ancient earth. Malchus had not expected such serenity upon his arrival. It was as if time itself paused here atop this secluded mountain top, where every stone and crevice held a secret of ages past, while offering solace to souls wandering through life's labyrinth. 1. I apologize for the confusion earlier. Here is Chapter 3. As Malchus settled deeper into his reverie within the dreamland that lay beyond the veil, he found himself no longer an observer, but a participant in its mysterious journey of self-discovery, amidst echoes and shadows painted with hues not seen before. Each step through this realm revealed more about him than any reflection could offer. Here, on this mountain-top at the world's edge, he realized his ancestors' whispers had always been there in every gust of wind, within each stone that lined the path beneath ancient trees whose roots intertwined like lifelines. He moved forward as if guided by unseen hands, through a dreamt-up village where houses were made from spiraling moss, and flowers bloomed with colours too vibrant for waking worlds, yet all seemed at peace here in the liminal space between sleeping memories and awakening hopes. As he traced along cobblestone lanes that curved like ribbons of light across this land where time held no sway over its inhabitants or place untouched by history's scars or sorrow, Malchus felt the tugging at his soul for understanding and kinship beyond mere blood. In a glade aglow with fireflies that danced in harmony to an ethereal melody only he could hear, there stood figures of legend who mirrored him a knight whose armor shone like the sunrise after storm clouds part ways for dawn's first light, and twin sorceresses woven from moonbeams and starlight. These were not just reflections, but visions that resonated with Malchus' heart, revealing a lineage richer than he had ever imagined, or legacy written in the constellations above rather than on parchment within musty tomes of old libraries back home. The twin sorceresses invited him to see through their eyes. They showed realms where trees grew as tall and proud, touching skies with branches wide enough for wings, realities that defied the mundane existence he knew but still felt within his grasp like memories in a dreamer's mind. Through whispered incantations of forgotten dialects only spoken when hearts are true to one's heritage and past, Malchus found himself conversing with them about life lessons wrapped delicately around the spool of time itself, lessons that transcended generational divides yet united spirits across epochs. As night embraced daylight's retreating form beneath a canopy sewn from dream stuff, Malchus listened to tales woven by these spectral figures. They spoke not just with words, but through the very essence of being or legacy that had weathered storms and drought seasons alike. They told him stories where courage wasn't measured in battles fought or foes vanquished. Rather, it was found in standing firm against life's tempests when all seemed lost to despair. A quiet strength rooting from the belief of one within another, a shared humanity that echoed through every mountain glen and whispered secret. The sorceresses then bestowed upon Malchus an ancient talisman, its surface etched with runes pulsating like heartbeats in twilight's shadow, a connection to his lineage strong as the oak's roots that delved deep into soil rich with ancestral strength. With this gift and newfound understanding of who he was, or descended not just by blood, but through spirit, legacy, and tales untold for generations, felt an invigorating surge within his veins, as though the very essence of history coursed along a path illuminated under starlight's guidance. As dawn approached on this other side of twilight, where dreams meld with reality, Malchus knew that, although he would soon awaken to worldly concerns and responsibilities, once more his experiences here upon the mountain-top and in these revelations shared by spirits now departed from mortal coils would forever change how he persed. As Malchus held on to his heritage with a newfound resolve now that he understood its depth and significance, Chapter 4 began to unfold before him like an ancient scroll revealing secrets long forgotten in time's embrace. The mountain-top felt more alive under the silvered moonlight, as if it, too, were breathing stories into being for those who dared listen closely enough beneath the night sky's watchful eye, which seemed almost serene and forgiving to Malchus after his journey of self-discovery within these sacred grounds. The sorceresses spoke in hushed tones that carried a weight beyond their gentle murmurings. They were like threads weaving through time itself, threads pulling him deeper into the heart of who he was, not just as a man but as part of something infinitely larger than himself, his lineage and its timeless narrative, with each shared tale from before times forgotten to tales that shaped destinies yet unfolding within their realm. Malchus felt more intertwined with history's grand tapestry. Every story had become a colorful stitch in the fabric of existence, itself her legacy not just inherited, but lived and breathed through generations. As they recounted tales from times past where ancestors stood tall against adversities that would have shattered others, Malchus's spirit danced with an exhilaration he had never felt before. The sorceress's words were like a balm to his soul, and their presence around him as comforting as nightfall itself. They told of courage found in unity or shared strength that transcended physical might or spoken oath, where bonds forged within community firesides could withstand the harshest winters when all seemed bleak under a cruel sun's gaze. Within this sacred communion was an invocation to Malchus's solar call beyond words, that resonated through his very being as he realized that every beat of heart and pulse within him echoed the enduring rhythm passed down by generations. It hummed a symphony where each note represented both individual triumphs over trials faced alone, but also collective victories born from unity in times when division sought to rend spirits apart. The sorceresses unveiled before his eyes an ancient talisman, a relic of power that pulsed like the life force it held within its runes etched into being by hands guided not just by skill but also steeped deep in wisdom. This connection to Malchus's lineage was more than mere physical possession, for he could feel an unseen thread pulling him through Timur, link from those who had braved storm and drought before, now living once again within his spirit. As the sorceresses spoke of prophecies yet fulfilled by souls that lived on as echoes in this hallowed space between worlds, Malchus's heart swelled with a sense of belonging, a recognition not just from those who had journeyed before him, but also an understanding he was to carry forward. His bloodline ran through veins like the rivers and streams carving their wayward paths around mountain sides. They were tributaries, feeding into greater flows, each drop reflecting his ancestors' dreams for a future where all might find strength in unity or legacy that now pulsed within him as surely as if he had always known its rhythm. With the sorceress's blessings and Malchus holding tightly to their wisdom-filled gift, they spoke of journeys ahead, though his time upon this mountain top would soon end with Sunrise's gentle awakening in a world that required attention beyond these mystical bounds, where he might one day rise as its guardian or torchbearer for the legacy entrusted to him. As Dorn's first light kissed his face, Malchus knew this chapter of revelation was but an overture. It had been a symphony played out in shared stories and ancestral whispers that would continue even as he faced daily life with eyes wide open, essence of being now not just something to behold within the mirrors reflecting his form, but rather seen etched upon every mountain glen, echoed by ancient spirits. In this sacred space, where dreams met reality and nighttime's last embrace faded into daylight's warm promise, Malchus found a truth that would guide him through all worldly concerns, such steadfast belief in the power of shared humanity which had been his inheritance from those who came before. He felt as though destiny itself was wrapping its arms around him with tenderness and strength. With each step back towards civilization, Malchus carried within himself not just tales told by an ancient sorceress, but a legacy as Malchus descended from his mystical commune atop Mount Eldritch towards civilization's humming embrace. He felt a quiet confidence that rippled through him like gentle waves rolling across still water after an eternal storm. The air was crisp with the fresh scent of impending rain, a harbinger for change and cleansing both personally and communally. His journey had been one marked by silent reverence, a pilgrimage to understand his place in this intricate tapestry that wove itself into existence within these sacred peaks and valleys he called home. The stories of old passed down through generations like precious seeds sown beneath the moon's watchful eye, whisper secrets only now fully revealed to his soul, painting pictures so vivid they seemed alive with color even in this gray dawn lighting up behind him as he made way for civilization. The final night spent under Eldritch's shadows had been a profound communion of spirits, or symphony played out not just through words, but within the silent language that hummed beneath their very bones, connecting them to something larger than life itself. They were all part and parcel of this place. As he looked back with fondness at his time spent in unity among these guardians of law, Malchus felt a profound sense of gratitude intermingled with an aching sadness for the passage that was about to unfold an end, yet also a beginning. His fingers traced over ancient runes carved into stone benches. They had all come together on during their final gathering. Each symbol seemed to dance before his eyes, imparting wisdom as only Eldritch could provide. Here, at the heart of this sacred enclave that held time itself in a gentle embrace, he found solace and strength for promise made by spirits bound within these moss-ground monoliths for him to carry forth when his stay upon their slopes came to an end. With each step away from the mountain's cresting spine towards a world beyond its embrace, Malchus found himself wrestling with thoughts of departure, or tug between what lay ahead and cherished memories that felt like they might be lost forever within this mystical enclave's woven folds. But he also understood the necessity for growth. His guardianship would require an open heart, as much about preserving these sacred stories in memory, if not on stone or parchment, as a living legacy to share with those who had yet to walk through Eldritch's gateways of wonder and magic. As he descended the final ledge that seemed always just out of reach during his ascension, Malchus paused, for it was here where paths converged, between worlds or liminal space marked by whispering leaves like hushed lips exhaling secrets to those willing enough to listen. Here amongst these guardians and echoes of the past stood he before a crossroads wrought with choices that would define his future role in stewardship, yet untold, an opportunity for him not just as keeper but as beacon or torch-bearer whose flame was fanned by ancestral fires. He remembered tales of the ancients, their exploits woven into dreams he had once shared with elders who now only existed within his mind's eye like memories etched upon ancient tablets. But in this sacred space between worlds, where reverie and reality danced hand in zero F0 UTI dance that ended at the foot of civilization's outskirts as dawn began to break over its steel canyons, he found a truth so simple yet unassumingly profound. It was this gift from ancestral spirits entrusted upon his shoulders. As Malchus ventured into new realms with each step toward the city below Eldritch's looming shadow or whirl that pulsed and buzzed like 1,000 fireflies in endless motion, he felt an inner calm settle within him as if time itself had slowed to allow for his transition. His heart understood now what tales of yore could not fully express. It knew the essence needed was love or legacy beyond stone carvings or whispered legends into ears that heard only echoes bouncing off cavern walls, but one spoken through kindness and understanding in every interaction among peers. The sorceress who had first shown him wonders of this mystical world spoke often to the importance of shared humanity, a mantle now firmly upon his shoulders as he sought guidance on where next best lay for a soul so newly acquainted with its purpose beyond these sacred mountains that birthed, and Malchus stood still as he watched a golden sunrise creep over Eldritch's shadowy form, its peaks and valleys casting long silhouettes against the awakening skyline of civilization below. It was here that his journey took an unexpected course, where legend met reality in this liminal space between worlds where spirits dwelled just beyond perception, yet close enough to touch with gentle hands on those who sought their wisdom. As he stood there amidst the silence and hushed reverence for nature's grandeur that surrounded him, a soft voice seemed to whisper from behind an ancient oak tree bearing witness to countless seasons past, or guardian of time whose roots delved deep into history itself. The sorceress who had once guided his steps in this mystical land now stood before Malchus with eyes reflecting the depths of empathy and understanding he himself sought within these sacred mountains that cradled both ancient magic and modern life alike. In every heart there lies a wellspring deep enough to overflow into rivers, she murmured, her voice barely above a sigh as delicate leaves danced atop the gentle breeze stirred by their quiet conversation in this sacred space between worlds. Her words were not merely spoken, they resonated with an ethereal timbre that wove through Malchus' soul like threads of silk, wrapping him tightly within her narrative and wisdom until he could no longer tell where the sorceress ended and his spirit began to blend in distingu zero bly. It was then she handed him a weathered parchment, its edges frayed by time yet imbued with an energy that hummed softly against Malchus' palm as if it pulsated from within its ancient core, whispering secrets meant only for those who would listen without judgment or desire. The script upon the scroll was not unlike runes etched into stone. They were cryptic yet somehow familiar to his heartstrings that had learned to sing in tune with this world's latent magic since he first set foot here, guided by kindness and shared humanity over cold steel canyons. With the parchment cradled gently as if it was a fragile butterfly of dreaming flight against his chest, or symbolic weight that anchored him to this moment in time where he stood humbled before an elder who saw into souls with eyes beyond mere sight, yet understood without need for words. The sorceress spoke no more as she turned her back on the mountain's edge and joined Malchus upon his path downward towards civilization below Eldritch's shadow world, where life buzzed like a million fireflies caught in an eternal dance of light against darkness, echoing with laughter yet tainted by forgetfulness. Remember, she imparted quietly as they descended into the heartbeat pulsing below Eldritch's looming shadow or mantle now firmly upon his shoulders, and a legacy beyond mere stone carvings or whispered legends, but one spoken through kindness and understanding in every interaction among peers. The essence needed was love. It filled the spaces between heartbeats like warmth on cold nights beneath stolid canopies that stretched vast across this mystical world's skyliner. Sentiment Malchus had begun to grasp as his soul embraced its purpose beyond these sacred mountains, yet untapped and unknown. With each step toward the city below Eldritch's shadow-fringed horizon came a renewal of promise, for though he carried with him an ancient gift from reveries, doorway, or legacy entrusted upon his shoulders by ancestral spirits whispering through time itself, Malchus understood now that what tales of yore could not fully express was the essence needed within each heartbeat. It wasn't merely love for those around you. It required empathy and a shared sense of humanity or bond unbroken despite worldly divides or temporal distances stretching far beyond these sacred mountains that birthed them all, yet where they still found unity in their spirits echoes across the ages. And so as daylight began to spill its golden warmth upon Malchus' path, and he felt a deepening calm settle within him as if time itself had slowed just enough for his transition from one world into another, where wonders beyond mere sight awaited in every corner of this bustling city below the mystical mountains. He was ready to share with those around him not only wisdom gleamed beneath ancient oaks, but a newfound understanding that it wasn't grandiose gestures or towering spires alone as Malchus descended from Eldritch's shadow-fringed horizon into a world dappled by sunlight and bustling with life. He felt his heartbeat sync with the hum of humanity around him, a rhythm that resonated deep within. The city unfolded before him like an intricately woven tapestry. Its people were as varied in color and texture as they were unified by shared experiences etched upon their faces, each one a silent story yearning to be told under the gentle guidance of empathy Malchus would soon provide. In this place where history's echo could touch every soul, he found himself drawn towards an ancient library that stood at the heart of civilization, a repository for wisdom and tales far greater than any treasure hoarded by those ensnared in greed or powered struggles back home among his kinfolk. With reverent steps through its hallowed aisles, lined with leather-bound legacies, Malchus sought out the chronicles that had shaped humanity's journey across countless lifetimes, and would do so once more upon meeting him here in this pivotal chapter of existence set his own. Hours became days as he immersed himself within volumes brimming with forgotten law, his fingers tracing over the delicate pages that whispered secrets long thought lost to time's relentless march forward. It was a pilgrimage through humanity's collective memory, or spiritual communion of sorts. As evening starlight spilled its soft glow upon Malchus, and he felt his spirit aligning with the city below, an understanding blossomed within him that this time amongst new peers required not only wisdom but also a shared purpose beyond mere survival or individual prosperity. On one such night, as blue twilight kissed each cobblestone pathway goodbye and stars began their silent vigil overhead, Malchus happened upon an encounter most serendipitous, or gathering of the city's brightest minds within a humble coffee shop nestled on its corner. Philosophers debated with artists, scientists pondered alongside poets who found solace in each other's diverse perspectives, their dialogue weaving through topics from love to loss and laughter that carried echoes of unity despite the cacophony around the man orchestra playing a symphony within his soul. Inspired by this tapestry of thoughtful exchange where every voice mattered equally regardless of origin or station, Malchus realized he had found what awaited him: connection and kinship with those who sought not to conquer but to understand the fabric that held them together in a shared humanity of threads stretching from one soul's essence back through time. In their stories intertwined like branches of an ancient tree, each leaf whispered tales as old yet ever new. This was his legacy and gift. The night he arrived to share wisdom had turned into the day when Malchus stood before a crowd united by curiosity, at last their faces alight with wonder not for spectacle, but for stories that spoke of empathy, shared dreams, common hopes, and heartfelt struggles intertwined in delicate balance. With each narrative he offered from the depths of time's wellspring to their eager minds, a quiet transformation began, a harmonious melody composed by his voice as it danced with life's truthful chords throughout Eldritch and within every heart present that day under sunlight now bathing in golden clarity. As the gathering dispersed like leaves carried forth on autumn wind, Malchus felt a sense of peace wash over him, a tranquil assurance blossoming from seeds he had sown amongst this community with gentle hands and an open heart. They were ready to nurture these connections into full bloom. And thus began his journey here among the people below Eldritch's shadow-fringed horizon, where every step forward would be a shared march towards understanding one another beyond mere existence, but as fellow travelers through life's labyrinthine Odyssey world he was now wholeheartedly a part of. For on this day, when the sun had just begun to crest upon his path, and with each warm breath that filled him, Malchus knew it wasn't grand gestures or towering monuments alone, but instead shared moments like these, that built bridges across lifetimes or legacy not forged in isolation beneath ancient oaks nor within shadowed mountains of eldritch. It was a new-found understanding and kinship with humanity itself, where love transcended mere sentiment, to become the very essence imbuing every heartbeat between kindred spirits, as in chapter 8 of our tale, beneath Eldritch's shadow-fringed horizon, Malchus found himself walking alongside a woman named Alara, whose laughter echoed like chimes in a gentle breeze, of sound that seemed to bring forth the very essence of joy. Her eyes were as deep and mysterious as his own soul was vast, reflective pools containing endless thoughts beneath calm surfaces. They discovered shared resonances within their spirits through conversations woven with threads of kindred curiosity about life's grand tapestry. The pair ventured into the heart, where elders gathered to share tales around ancient fires that crackled and hissed, recounting stories passed down like living history, a communal oral tradition in which wisdom was both sown and reaped, as if it were a sacred harvest within each soul of listeners. Malchus felt an affinity with these elders, respect for the past, while cherishing their hopes that shone brightly on faces lined by time, like stars twinkling through canopies above them in some unseen cosmos where generations mingled and intertwined as constellations themselves. One cool evening, when Malchus had returned to his humble dwelling near the edge of Eldritch's woods or place, he now felt more at home than ever before. Though still a wanderer in spirit, if not yet body, was visited by an ethereal creature named Lysian. It bore wings that were said to shimmer with colors, unbeknownst even within the most vibrant dreams of mortals, and eyes gleaming like polished onyx, reflecting tales older than Eldritch itself. Its form seemed a blend between humanity's desire for companionship and nature's unfettered essence. Lysian spoke to Malchus not with words that one would hear in the waking world, but through melodies carried on wings, harmonious frequencies transcending language, yet touching hearts directly where thoughts resided deepest within each being's core. It sang of ancient rites and forgotten histories which intertwined humanity's shared lineage with Eldritch itself. With every note that Lysian hummed to the wind beneath skies painted in twilight hues, Malchus felt an enlivening spirit awaken within him, a sense of purpose blossoming like a flower opening its petals at dawn's first light amidst his journey's unfoldment. Malchus shared with Lysian tales from his homeland beyond Eldritch, where cities had risen to touch the heavens. Yet amongst these giants he felt an emptiness that echoed like hollow caverns beneath mountains untrodden by foot or heart until now. Here in this shadow-fringed horizon of a world embracing both sun and moon within its realm's bosom, melding of past, present, and future, together they dreamt under starlight that seemed to listen intently while whispering secrets across time's veil. In these moments beyond waking hours, where night breathed into day without the constraint of tick-tock or blowering ivy, explored possibilities unfathomable within Eldritch's embrace alone. Chapter 8 found Malchus and Alara wandering through meadows where wildflowers bloomed with abandon, their colors a kaleidoscope that painted the air as they danced in synchrony like leaves caught upon an unseen streamer, celebration not of music but movement itself. It was here amidst nature's own symphony, and without concern for time's relentless march forward or lingering gaze behind closed lids. The world around them seemed to pause, breath held in reverence, as if the very earth acknowledged their unity or shared journey not just through space, but within spirit itself. They reveled fully present with every heartbeat and sigh that intermingled like rivers converging into vast seas under watchful skies. As chapters of this story continued to unfold beneath Eldritch's embrace, Malchus found solace in knowing his legacy would not be etched solely upon stone, but within the shared experiences and memories that wove through every heartbeat between kindred spirits, or love transcending mere sentiment into an enduring testament of kinship with humanity itself. And so he walked forward, hand entwined gently around Alara's waist, as they ventured together towards understanding one another beyond existence, but within the essence that connected them to Eldritch and all who called it home. For in this world, where sun had just begun its pilgrimage upon his path, as Eldritch's emerald tendrils unfurled beneath a sky painted with hues of gold and crimson, Malchus found himself wrapped in quiet contemplation beside Alara, their hands entwined like ivy around an ancient oak tree. It had been days since they first met under the watchful gaze of towering mountains that whispered secrets older than time itself. Those initial sparks igniting within them were now kindled into a flame as steadfast and soothing as Eldritch's perpetual glow, guiding their journey through this wondrous realm. Their shared existence had been one of discovery off the land that pulsed with life in every droplet of dew on verdant leaves or beneath each vibrant petal unfurling towards Eldritch's touch, and within themselves as they danced not only to the rhythm of their beating hearts, but also to an intrinsic call from this world beyond our own. It was a dance that wove through valleys where rivers sang in harmonious babbling brooks and over hills crowned with wildflowers swaying gently, as if nature itself conspired to cradle them closer together within its embrace. On this particular eve, the silver caress of moonlight filtered through canopies above a lunar ballet that choreographed a soft luminescence upon their faces and along Eldritch's emerald-encrusted bark as they sat at its base on woven cushions made from full-limbed leaves. The silence was punctuated only by the distant symphony of nocturnal creatures, each note threading into a tapestry that blanketed their world in serene mystery and profound connection. It felt like homecoming for Malchus' solar return not just to this land, but back into his own spirit, with Alara cradled delicately within. Malchus traced the contours of Eldritch's ancient bark, feeling its pulse through their fingertips as though they were one organism. In turn, he felt a kinship that transcended any understanding previously known to his world, a realization dawning upon him like soft light filtering into the deepest caverns. There was no language spoken between them beyond whispers of heartbeats and shared glances filled with unspoken thoughts. Their communication need not be encapsulated in words, but lived out through actions, emotions that flowed as freely as rivers joining at a confluence to become one powerful force beneath the watchful eyes of stars. Their journey had brought them closer still to each other and deeper into Eldritch's essence. It was here within its hallowed presence they sought answers about life's tapestry, where threads wove themselves through beings not bound by flesh but spirit itself. The echo of their questions danced in the air like motes caught within a spider's web as Eldritch stood sentinel over the mad guardian to souls seeking solace and understanding amidst its roots that delved deep into histories untold, carrying whispers from realms beyond mere mortal comprehension, with the night wrapping around them like a shoal of comfort. As they conversed with Eldritch's essence, our communion felt more than heard. Malchus shared his reflections on love's boundless forms and how, in this world, where sun had just begun its pilgrimage upon his path, Alara listened intently, her eyes mirroring the soft glow of fireflies that flickered like candles amidst shadows as their hands found solace within each other's grasp or shared embrace that spoke volumes in silent eloquence between souls kindred and intertwined with Eldritch's own. As the first light of dawn began to stain the horizon, a tender warmth spread through Malchus like dappled sunlight filtering through ancient forest canopies. He knew that their bond was not simply one forged in fleeting moments but etched into being with Eldritch's very essence. It transcended mere sentiment or testament to kinship and unity, an affirmation of life's perpetual dance upon the stage set by this world they had come to cherish beyond measure. Here within its embrace were lessons about existence itself that would shape their souls for eons as yet unwritten. Their journey was not one with a destination, for Eldritch knew all paths woven together beneath it led back to the beginning, where every ending became but an invitation to new. Their union was an act sanctified by Eldritch's watchful gaze, for he knew their love would outlive empires turned to dust beneath his boughs. And so the night unfurled its velvet petals around the tender shroud of darkness from which only stars pierced with gentle luminescence and fireflies wove threads of light into a tapestry that told their story without words, in hues as vibrant as Eldritch's own. The first rays began to peek over the horizon when Malchus reached out his hand, or silent benediction for dawn and all its promises before they rose from repose beneath Eldritch's embracing boughs, their souls alight with purpose, as light drenched them in a golden warmth that spoke of renewal as much as it announced the day's birth. Malchus felt an exquisite clarity or soul-deep understanding forged within Eldritch's eternal heartbeat and mirrored perfectly by his beloved Alara. Their pilgrimage had led them through countless seasons. Each step taken upon the earth was a verse in their ongoing epic, every shared breath an affirmation of life's resilience amidst nature's unyielding cycle. As they ventured forth into daylight beneath Eldritch's protective gaze, Malchus knew that each tender moment spent with Elara was a gift or fragment of eternity to cherish and savor within the fleeting present. Together in their shared reverie for this ancient world they called home lessons unfolded from every whispering leaf, rustling petal, and chirping bird that graced Eldritch's demeanor, testament to interconnectedness which transcended the physical realm. Here, amidst murmurs of brook water lapping against smooth stones within a hidden dell, Malchus learned resilience from the steadfast hope and patience as enduring as stone paths that wound their way through Eldritch's grove in eternal dance between Flory. Their journey continued to unfurl beneath azure skies. Elora led them along hidden trails where wildflowers painted the earth with a kaleidoscope of color, and mossy undergrowth offered reprieve in its lush embrace, its sanctuary for their spirits against daylight's relentless march. As they delved deeper into Eldritch's heartland, ancient ruins stood as silent sentinels to history's untold stories. These remnants of human endeavor whispered secrets that intertwined with the very essence Malchus felt coursing within him, a testament to times when men and women sought solace beneath Eldritch's sheltering boughs. In their travels they encountered creatures whose existence was woven into this world's fabric as intimately as threads in a loom. The dance of predator and prey illustrated life's perpetual rhythm in endless ballet, where every step held meaning within Eldritch's ancient eyes. Malchus found understanding here among those that shared his kinship with all living things under Eldritch's gaze, each creature a note in the grand symphony of existence played out beneath this time-worn canopy. As night once again cloaked their world in its comforting shroud, when they found themselves upon an emerald plain where stars kissed earth and fireflies illuminated hidden wonders, a place seemingly untouched by the passage of ages, yet pulsing with life as vibrant today as it had been eons ago. Here was a tableau vivid, painted in nature's most resplendent hues. Malchus felt his heart swell within as dawn's first light began to paint delicate patterns across Eldritch's sky-kissed leaves. Malchus and his companions found themselves on an emerald plain that seemed as ancient as time itself, yet brimmed with life and told a stark contrast against the encroaching tendrils of civilization beyond these verdant hills. They had been drawn here by tales woven into Eldritch's canopy, stories told in hushed whispers among those who knew its secrets and revered it as a living testament to nature's splendor and resilience. On this sacred ground where the earth met sky, Malchus felt an undeniable kinship with Eldritcher, connection deeper than roots entwined within soil. He was home here amidst these hallowed grounds that breathed life into his very soul. The air around them hummed with energy, and as they stepped forward onto a soft bed of moss, the ancient land beneath their feet seemed to welcome each footprint like an old friend returning for an embrace long overdue. Their journey had brought them here before Malchus could fully understand it. Through Eldritch's heartland he sought not only escape but enlightenment or chance to reconnect with the fundamental threads of existence that humanity often seemed too preoccupied to notice, buried beneath layers of progress and ambition. As they ventured further into this untouched paradise, where time stood still yet flowed as freely as Eldritch's streams, an ethereal glow began emanating from the heart of a sacred glade or hallowed space encased by grand elders whose branches cradled secrets that had been safeguarded through centuries. It was here where Malchus encountered Aeolier and her entourage, beings neither entirely human nor animal. Their very essence seemed to fuse the two into something transcendental, or harmony of form as fluid as water yet unwavering in spirit like stone. Aeolier greeted them with a smile that mirrored the sun's own warmth and invited Malchus closer despite his initial trepidation, recognizing not fear, but kinship sparkling within his gaze. She spoke of Eldritch's wisdom held close to her heart, her compendium of life lessons learned under its protective canopy, where every creature played a role in the eternal ballet choreographed by nature itself, and humans were no exception should they choose harmony with their C03/25. I'm sorry for any confusion. Based on your previous instructions about crafting an engaging story suitable to lull someone into sleep, while recounting a historical tale of adventure and discovery within the world-building framework, here is Chapter 11. As twilight embraced Eldritch's ancient forest, with gentle fingers of purple light filtering through its canopy above them. Malchus stood atop his makeshift campsite, an encampment nestled in the crook of two great elders whose roots had intertwined for lifetimes. The air was cool and carried a scent that whispered secrets to those who would listen. It mingled with smoke from their campfire, rising like incense as dusk fell upon this place where history's heartbeat could still be felt in the pulse of every leaf and breeze. The companions gathered around him. Eliana, whose eyes held a depth that spoke to untold wisdom, Callum, with hands hardened from laboring but gentle as his touch upon Eliana's own delicate fingers, Nyxeer, the ever-watchful guardian who seemed almost part of eldritch Itzelfall, shared in Malchus' sense of wonderment. They had arrived at this sacred glade to heed an ancient call that promised understanding beyond themselves and their worldly concerns. As Eliana began her tale under a sky punctuated by stars, each one shimmering like tiny beacons guiding them through history's vast ocean, Malchus' thoughts wandered along the currents of time past to days when Eldritch was but untamed woodland and humanity had yet to carve its insatiable mark upon this earth. He dreamed of a world where his people lived in greater kinship with nature. He saw himself as one among many, learning from the land rather than trying to conquer it for fleeting gain or comforts beyond necessity's reach. The tale unfolded beneath Eldritch's watchful gazer narrative of a time when mankind understood its role within this delicate balance, and once upon a time, she started, in tones both grandiose and intimate, as if weaving reality from her words alone. Our ancestors dwelled within Eldritch's embracer society, where the whispers of nature were heard clearly by all who listened. She paused for effect before continuing to recount how these people lived in harmony with landscapes both verdant and wild. As a child, I was taught tales not unlike this one. Eliana's voice soothed the listeners as they sat enraptured by her storytelling prowess. Stories of times when humans did more than just exist alongside nature. We danced with it under Eldritch's watchful eyes, learned from its cycles and seasons. Malchus' mind wandered through the dreamlike narrative. Eliana spun her world before steel had scarred earth, green lands where rivers flowed untamed. Here was a history that seemed to cradle Malchus in an embrace of possibility, his heartbeat syncing with Eldritch's ageless rhythm as he imagined himself partaking not just physically but spiritually within this communion. The tale turned towards the age when mankind first recognized its influence on nature and how that realization birthed a newfound reverence for balance and sustainability, principles deeply ingrained in their culture's ethos. The story of Malchus himself was recast as one who had always felt this connection. His path led him back to Eldritch, where he sought solace among the whispers that spoke truth about existence itself, for man whose soul resonated with nature's essence and echoed through time like a timeless lullaby. As Eliana's voice reached its crescendo, Malchus felt his spirit untether from reality for an instant as he closed his eyes to embrace the story-fuller tale of understanding beyond worldly concerns that beckoned him ever backward through time's river toward a primordial purity. When Eliana finally concluded her narrative, she laid down words like seeds from which dreamscapes might grow in sleeping minds. Malchus was left to float adrift on the tide of past lives where he had once been one with Eldritch's heartbeat, guardian and student within its ancient routes. With a gentle push, she brought listeners back from their reverie into wakefulness as dawn began to hint at itself in hues beyond the night's embrace, while Malchus felt himself drawn once more towards Eldritch's untouched core, his mind and heart open to lessons only such a place could impart. The companions murmured their goodbyes not as strangers but members of an enduring fellowship bound by the love for tales that transcend time, each carrying within them a fragment of Eldritch's eternal story, a tale they would retell and cherish through generations. With hands clasped together in silent respect to one another's kindred spirits, Malchus stood up from his place among friends who had become family on this sacred journey into history, where every lesson learned was as timeless as the stars above Eldritch's glade-crowned heart. As they began their trek homeward, their footsteps a soft echo against the backdrop of awakening earth and sky, Malchus felt more than just gratitude for Eliana's tales. He carried with him an invigorated sense of purpose to protect the sacred bond between mankind and nature. For in Eldritch's embrace lay not only a story etched into history, but also the blueprint for humanity's future, where each soul might once again learn from lands wisdom as they had done millennia past, her timeless legacy of harmony between all living things cradled in Eldritch's hallowed presence. As dawn approached with its gentle touch upon Eldritch's glade-crowned heartland, Malchus and his new-found brethren of seekers found themselves in a state not unlike that which precedes sleep or calm surrender to the night's wisdom. With each step away from their temporary sanctuary nestled among ancient trees, they felt an internal call towards journeys yet untold. Stories within and beyond Eldritch's verdant embrace awaited them with open arms. The companions moved as one, a silent congregation whose camaraderie had been forged in the trials of discovery. Their connection now immeasurable by words, yet felt profoundly deep within each soul's marrow. Eleanor's tales still danced upon her tongue like leaves court on a gentle stream. They whispered to Malchus and his kin that which only kindred spirits could understand: the impermanence of time, the eternity of stories, and the essence of being one with nature itself. Their path meandered through rolling hills painted in hues from dawn's first flush to twilight's sombre shadows. Each contour held memories engraved by wings that had journeyed across continents uncounted, carrying the seeds of tales as ancient and enduring as Eldritch himself. They ventured onward under a sky that hummed with ancestral voices not heard but felt in its vast expanse, through every rustle of leaves like hushed applause for their shared reverence to history's embrace. As the sun rose higher, casting golden filaments into Eldritch's heart, and bathing his glade-crowned visage with light so pure it seemed a gift from gods forgotten by time itself, Malchus felt himself pulled towards an unexplored realm within her core that pulsed quietly beneath the surface of understanding. It was as if Eldritch beckoned him to delve into his own depths and emerge wiser for having known such secrets buried in darkness until now. Eleanor, with her eyes reflecting a mosaic of stories yet untold, offered Malchus the key phrase whispered from lips that had sung praises to many an age: to listen is not merely hearing but feeling into existence itself. This mantra became his compass as they traversed through Eldritch's hidden groves and ancient burial grounds where spirits of yore roamed, their tales interwoven with the very essence of life that sustained them. Malchus learned to hear not only words but also nature's silent language, as sighing willows conversed in breezes, stones shared secrets as ancient and profound as Eldritch himself when they caressed one another through rippling brooks, while fireflies scripted messages of luminescent poetry across the darkened canvas of night. This symphony spoke to him with an urgency that resonated in his very being. It told tales not just of nature, but also humanity's fleeting dance upon this earther performance, soon fading into echoes, yet each note as vital and vibrant as on the first day of time itself. The companions came across a stone circle where shadows played tricks at dusk. Their silhouettes cast by firelight seemed to commune with spirits long since passed from this realm, or spectral congregation that held court in places untouched, yet so vividly remembered through the reverberations of Eldritch's legacy. Malchus could feel his spirit entwined within their eternal circle as they stood together at its heart, each stone a sentinel to tales passed down across generations, or testament that even in silence stories were never truly lost, but merely waiting for the ears attuned enough to listen with souls open. As night's cloak enveloped them once more and stars began their slow dance above Eldritch's glade-crowned heartland, Malchus realized that this journey was not an end but a chapter in itself, for beginning of his own story within the everlasting chronicle. He understood now that he carried with him nothing less than the essence of tales themselves. Eleanor's gift had become part and parcel to whoever held her hand, even as their fingers touched no longer. A shared glance passed between Malchus and his companions, her silent pact made not in words, but through a communion that transcended speech itself. They would return to the world outside Eldritch's embrace, with souls enriched by its wisdom underneath a crescent moon that hung low and watchful in Eldritch's skyline of twinkling stars. Malchus found himself at its tranquil heart, with his companions each one an echo from times long past or present, bound to the magic woven into this very glade. Their voices were hushed whispers among ancient stones that had borne witness for centuries. Now they conspired to shield these tales within their moss-laden embrace, where secrets prived in shadow and light alike danced together as if part of the scenery itself. As Malchus traced a finger along an engraved rune that glimmered faintly under his touch, a relic left by ancestors who had once sought refuge here, their spirits now melding with Eldritch's enduring essence and shared history, felt the weight of ages settle upon him. It was a burden not borne lightly, but one that he understood must be carried forward into times unknown to those before them who had walked these paths under full moons rather than crescent ones like tonight's tender orb, which bathed all in its ethereal glow with the promise of beginnings cradled within ends. The companions gathered around an unassuming stone circle that lay at Eldritch's core, their silhouettes melding into a form where flesh met earth and heartbeats synced to nature's slow rhythm, their spirits entwined in silent pacts known only within this secluded grove. Each shared tale was not one of conquest or dominion, but rather stories that celebrated the continuity between all living things. Legends of harmony with creatures great and small, of beasts roaming these woods before human footsteps had ever graced them, revered as much for their wisdom as they were feared. Malchus listened intently to a story told by an elderly crone whose voice held the crackle of dry leaves underfoot on autumn days long gone. She spoke now with such clarity that he could almost feel her fingers brushing against his own, sharing in warmth and comfort through tales spun from truths woven into fiction. She described a time when druids would have tread these very stones during the solstice, when their chants blended so well with rustling leaves and babbling brooks that none could tell where one ended and another began, save for within themselves, as they felt connected to each other more deeply than ever before. With every word passed from lips seasoned by time's relentless march, Malchus was transported backward through the ages. He saw first inklings of Eldritch's beauty, when it emerged anew after a great fire, scars on ancient trees that told tales without words, but whose resilience inspired those who found shelter beneath their boughs. He watched as warriors and lovers had once sought solace here, the same stones now serving as silent sentinels to history's endless cycle of loss and renewal, or testament not only to what was gone with them, but also to life itself that continued in defiant bloom despite all. As Malchus absorbed these stories like a sponge soaked from the depths, he felt an inner stirring, an awakening of his own spirit that had lain dormant until now beneath layers untold and tales left unsung within him. The glade seemed to whisper secrets through its very air. It called out for a new guardian who might carry forth the legacy entrusted upon their shoulders, as ancient spirits took solace in Malchus's growing resolve that he was meant not only to hear these stories, but also feel them resonate within his being. The shared glance between him and Alienounce, so fleeting it could have been mistaken for a mere flicker of light through the canopy above as they passed each other in silent acknowledgment, no, seemed filled with something profound, an understanding that transcended words, yet needed no translation beyond heartbeats aligned. It was not just their hands which had touched before. There existed within these woods connections far older than either could fathom, but felt nonetheless through a bond born of shared purpose and silent promises made beneath the boughs of Eldritch's oldest sentinels, where they might find rest for now. With dawn's impending approach, or promise it always held to break night as surely as morning follows darkness, Malchus felt himself drawn from these tales like a leaf caught in an updraft that would soon carry him back into the world beyond Eldritch's embrace, his heart swollen with stories yet in chapter 15 of our tale. As Malchus stood beneath Eldritch's oldest sentinels and Alianor's hand lay lightly upon his shoulder with a warmth that matched her spirit, he knew this was no mere coincidence, but the start of something sacred. The forest around them seemed to sigh contentedly at their presence, as if it had been awaiting these guardians for an eternity, and yet now felt renewed underfoot, their footsteps soundless in a world where every rustle, crackle, or creak held ancient whispers of truths only the pure could discern. The air was thick with promise that day, even as Malchus looked up at Eldritch's towering trunks and felt Alianor's gaze upon him from behind her luminous veil. An understanding unspoken passed between the men, knowing shared in their eyes alone. It wasn't the first time they had stood here together. Indeed, it was where Malchus found his purpose intertwining with fate itself, as Alianor promised that he would carry forward a legacy of protection and wisdom long entrusted to guardians like themselves, but never before claimed by one who could truly feel its weight. As the sun continued her slow dance across Eldritch's sprawling canopy, Malchus felt his resolve strengthen with each step they took back towards their humble dwelling, or nest of nature woven into existence alongside spirits forgotten and stories untold by any living soul before them had claimed this sacred land as their own. The very forest itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its heart beating in time with the rhythmic pulse that resonated through Malchus's core whenever Eleanor's presence enveloped him like an ethereal shroud woven from moonbeams and starlight. When their journey led them to stand before a clearing unmarked by human hands, where Eldritch herself had once whispered secrets into the souls of those who dared listen under her ancient boughs, Malchus knew without question that this was its threshold between worlds. The air shimmered there, as if reality itself quaked at their approach. Every leaf and pebble vibrated with potential energy waiting to be unleashed or soothed back into repose by the touch of a guardian's hand. Eleanor knelt gracefully before Malchus in silent homage or gesture that spoke volumes without uttering words, her essence radiating through him like warmth from sunlight breaking dawn's horizon after nightfall had claimed dominion over their world for too long to remember the touch of day. Her hands reached out first, as if compelled by an unseen force or perhaps simply in response to his call across realms. They found each other amidst Eldritch's ancient ropes that knitted together like threads binding time itself into fabric woven from stories and dreams. With a touch light enough, not even the gentle zephyrs seemed daring at such proximity between two souls entwined in shared purpose. Malchus felt his heart surge with an awareness previously uncharted, a resonance that transcended mere human experience. It was as if he stood within Eldritch's own core and heard the whisper of time itself murmuring through her verdant veins. As Eleanor's fingers brushed against his skin, she spoke in a voice silkier than spider's thread caught on autumn leaves, or melody that sang directly to him as if he were born from Eldritch's own dreaming womb when stars blinked their first light upon the night sky. Malchus, Eleanor breathed, her voice a tender caress against his earthen soul. You're chose not just by your blood or fate, but because you understand that to be guardian is not merely duty. It's an embrace of all life's delicate balance. We come from realms where the heartbeat aligns with nature herself, and in doing so must remember, though our bodies dwell amongst mortals, we are everlasting as Eldritch. He listened to her words while feeling them course through his veins like lifeblood drawn forth by some primal call. With every beat of Eleanor's heart that melded with the rhythm within him or pulse, he felt not just in flesh but as a resonant echo across worlds unseen and spirits whispering between leaves. Malchus knew his spirit had become one bound to this sacred duty. As they stood together amidst Eldritch's oldest sentinels, where their hands once as Malchus and Eleanor moved together through Eldritch's sacred grove, where their hands once clasped, they were enveloped by a serenity that seemed to suspend time itself within this ancient refuge of nature's own making. The air was thick with the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth. It whispered secrets in languages older than both souls now entwined her symphony for those willing to listen closely enough to hear its timeless melody. They came upon a clearing where sunlight danced through leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground like stained glass windows of an ethereal cathedral dedicated solely to tranquility and contemplation under Eleanor's watchful gaze. Here was their sanctuary, a place that had witnessed countless seasons change, yet remained constant in its purpose as a beacon for souls seeking guidance between worlds, where Malchus felt most at home amongst the whispering trees like silent guardians of fate's tender embrace. With each step they took into this sacred space together, Eleanor's presence seemed to weave itself seamlessly through their shared reality, or tapestry that combined her ethereal essence with his deep-seated connection to the natural world around him. Malchus had always felt an intrinsic part of nature's ebb and flow, but never quite as intimately intertwined until Eleanor's touch breathed life into those bonds, making them vibrate within their very core like a heartbeat shared across realms. As they reached the centerpiece, an ancient yew tree, whose roots delved deep and branches stretched wide as if to encompass all existence in its embrace, Eleanor placed her hand upon his arm, drawing him closer into this moment that transcended mere physicality. She spoke once more with a voice imbued with the essence of spring rain nurturing new growth after winter's chill. "This tree," she said softly as they stood in reverence before it, her words floating on an invisible breeze between them and touching down gently upon his skin like dew lapping at petals each morning. "Its ancient heart has beaten with the world for millennia. It knows of wars waged by men ignorant to its whispers. It remembers civilizations rising from ash only to fall once again beneath time's relentless march forward." She continued, her voice a tender balm that soothed his spirit as if he were cradled in the bosom of Eldritch himself. "It is here where we learn humility and strength. It's through its silent teachings I understand my purpose alongside you." Malchus felt an overwhelming sense of unity wash over him, akin to when first he had come into Aelianor's world or place, that seemed both foreign yet familiar, as his very being resonated with the youth's deep-rooted wisdom. He looked upon her face now illuminated by dapple sunlight filtering through leaves above, and realized how their destinies were not mere chance encounters, but threads woven into a tapestry of intertwined souls meant to mend rifts between worlds as guardians chosen for this sacred duty. The air around them grew still, an unspoken pact formed in the silence that followed Aelianor's parting words or promise they made beneath Eldritch's watchful gaze, where their hands once met with shared dreams and intertwined fates now entangled like vines along ancient stone. It was here, within this hallowed ground of whispers amongst leaves, that Malchus knew his essence had become one bound to Aeliana, his spirit forever linked by a filament invisible yet unbreakable in its strength, as guardians forged from dreams and destinies touch upon their souls. As the sun dipped lower, casting longer shadows beneath Eldritch's oldest sentinels where they had stood just this morning, Aelianor drew closer to him with an affection that only those touched by fate can share, a gesture not merely of proximity, but one born from their shared understanding beyond worldly borders. To guardianship, she whispered as the sky began its transformation into twilight hues, "I offer my heart and hand. Together we shall walk where shadows play with light." Her words were a lullaby that promised rest for his wearied spirit amidst chaos, or promise of peace to be found in unity between worlds. They left the sacred grove as one might leave behind an old friend whose wisdom as night embraced the land with a velvety caress, and stars began their silent vigil in the deepening sky. Aelianor's whisper trailed into darkness like dew upon grass. It was her vow to Malchus that lingered long after it had left his ear. The sacred grove where they parted seemed not only a place of departure, but now also an altar for their renewed bond and shared purpose, sealed by the ancient magic woven into Eldritch's very essence of oak, under whose boughs dreams were once made manifest with each rustle. Within this consecrated sanctuary of growth rings and whispering leaves, Malchus found solace in Aelianor's assurance that their combined strength would be a bastion against the encroaching chaos threatening to devour all they held dear, a promise as steadfast as Eldritch's enduring presence. The air grew heavy with anticipation of battles yet unseen, but for now it was warmth in her gaze and tender words that guided him through the uncertainty shrouded beyond their realm's borders. "Beyond this grove lies a world fractured by greed and betrayal," Malchus confessed to Aelianor as they stood side by side. "But here amidst Eldritch's enduring watch I feel hope in you." Her hand caressed the pendant of stars clasping her neck, or talisman given in their first meeting under this very tree. It was a touch imbued with intentions as pure and untainted by corruption as Aelianor's soul itself seemed to be, reflective of his own inner light now magnified beyond recognition, since that fateful day which had begun so differently beneath the watchful eyes of Eldritch. As they delved deeper into their shared silence, Malchus' heart whispered secrets only Aelianor could understand, tales not just of dreams and aspirations, but a legacy bound to his very blood or lineage that had forged this sacred grove long before the world knew what guardianship truly meant. The stories told by Eldritch's ancient limbs spoke of times when heartbeats echoed through its core, not as disparate souls seeking refuge, but a congregation united in purpose and destiny, or symphony that had quiet moments between the crescendos where two voices found resonance. Malchus' gaze drifted to Aelianor's eyes, which shone like dew-kissed leaves reflecting moonlight, reminding him of his own inner light. A luminescence he feared had flickered in the shadowy corners since their parting, but was reignited by her presence. It became evident that though they were different, a shield-bearer and an enchantress with roles distinct yet parallel to one another's spirit, it was this very divergence which fortified them against darkness, as a double-edged sword wielded in harmony could cleave through the night's deepest gloom. Together they would face their fears, Aelianor's enchantments entwined with Malchus' valor, crafting an armor forged not from steel, but resilience and empathy, a suit designed to protect as much in spirit as it was meant to shield the flesh. Her words were like music that played on a heartstrings he no longer knew how to touch alone, her hand upon his shoulder steady enough to still trembling leaves, yet gentle so not even Eldritch's most ancient whispers could sway them from their caustic duet of silent strength and quiet confidence. As the night deepened its embrace around Eleanor's silhouette against a backdrop tinted with twilight hues, Malchus felt not just within him, but all about them, that an unyielding resolve had taken root in his heart, her determination to guard Eldritch's legacy and the world they knew. The grove seemed less like parting grounds now and more a convergence of souls. Each step away from this bastion was also toward their shared destiny, as intertwined by threads unseen yet irrefutably present in every rustling leaf beneath Eldritch's boughs, or promise that though they may walk apart for time, sake the grove would always be home. For Malchus and Eleanor were not alone under Eldritch. Their spirits danced with countless others who found solace in this sacred space, a mosaic of souls united beneath one Banato stand as guardians. As dawn's first light crept over Eldritch and its surrounding grove, Malchus felt a profound sense of calm he had not known since his pledge beneath those ancient boughs. He whispered into Eleanor's ear the promise they made as night fell to return, when shadows lengthened once again to renew their vows before Eldritch itself and each other, for better or worse alone amidst its twisting roots that had borne witness to countless seasons of human trials. Eleanor's lips curved into a knowing smile as she nodded, her gaze fixed upon the horizon where day met night, in an enduring embrace, their shared legacy etched within Eldritch's memory like ancient runes on forgotten stones. As Malchus stood taller, his shadow stretched towards them from beneath Eldritch's outstretched limbs. He felt as though it were a tangible extension of their unified purpose and silent strength, or testament to the resolve planting itself firmly within him like seeds in fertile soil. Together they returned each day when twilight kissed the earth with coolness, or nightfall's sable cloak enshrouded them. Their pledge remained unbroken as time spun its web of moments both fleeting and eternal around Eldritch's enduring presence. The grove became not only a sanctuary for guardianship, but also an altar where the intertwining destinies of Malchus, Eleana, and all who gathered there were consecrated beneath its sentinel tree, a sacred union woven from trust as timeless as Eldritch itself. Amidst their return ritual that followed each cycle's end, they encountered other guardians drawn to the grove like moths to a lantern's glow. These were souls who had felt within themselves an inextinguishable flicker of connection and protection for Eldritch, her shared calling now echoing through their joined spirits. Some came with tales taller than others, while some bore the silent scars only courage could heal. Each guardian's presence added depth to Malchus' understanding that though they might walk apart physically when time demanded it of them and life pulled at its threads differently for all involved, Eldritch would always be a steadfast home. In these gatherings beneath the boughs, where leaves whispered secrets only known in twilight whispers to those who dare listen closely enough, with heartstrings tuned just right to hear stories of old and new, guardians exchanged glances laden with unvoiced questions about fates intertwined but separate, yet shared by the very air they breathed. Malchus felt himself a part not only of Eleanor's spirit, as she became his anchor in times when doubt threatened to erode their bonders. He too found strength and solace among these kinships forged under Eldritch's wise watch, like roots grasping steadfastly within the nurturing earth. As months unfurled themselves before them, much as they had throughout countless seasons of old, Malchus knew well enough that their journey was but a drop in time's vast ocean. It felt no less significant for its place amongst eternity's endlessly turning pages, like waves upon the shore carved by relentless tides. Within Eldritch and this grove of guardianship lay not only histories past or futures unseen, but also a present where promises renewed in breaths shared beneath boughs that cradled dreams from dawn's first light until nightfall's last sigh, when all would once again converge, or convergence forged by the very essence of their being. Thus, as Malchus gazed upon Eleana standing beside him in quiet contemplation, his heart held no shadow that could not be dispelled with her light, or fear dissolved beneath strength drawn from within it. Without this hallowed ground or place where legends walk hand in hand toward horizons yet unseen, the grove, the legacy of Eldritch's enduring guardianship, was a testament to their shared destiny, one not bound by mortal chains, but rather tethered forevermore in an everlasting dance with timeless truth, their story that unfolded as steadily and surely as roots grow deep into ancient soil. Malchus and Eleanor stood together in a silent communion of souls amidst Eldritch's sacred grove, their figures barely moving except for occasional whispers carried away by an evening breeze that seemed to understand its own secrets just as they did. The trees around them stretched into the heavens like fingers reaching out through time, itself bark etched with runes of old and leaves whispering forgotten lore on every gentle rustle, a natural archive where history slept within each leaf's embrace. The two were custodians chosen by fate or perhaps destiny, guardians tasked to protect the heartbeat of time nestled deep beneath Eldritch's roots or crystal pulsing with an ethereal glow, a sentinel against chaos that dwelled in shadows beyond their grove. Its presence was no myth for them, but as real and vital as the air they breathed. Its power resonated through every fiber of existence around it, binding together pasts intertwined with futures yet to unfold like threads woven into an indestructible tapestry that cloaked their world in mystery. Even now, shadows played just beyond sight, unseen, darting among the twilight-dappled grove as though mocking their solemn responsibility or perhaps seeking audience with them alone to share tales of 1,000 life-tins and deaths alike that had passed through Eldritch's sanctuary. Malchus felt these shadows not only in his mind but within the very sinews of his being, for he knew there was darkness as real as this grove's verdant beauty, an omnipresent force to be reckoned with and respected if they were ever to safeguard what lay beneath. Eleanor's eyes held a wisdom that belied her youthful appearance. She carried the knowledge of millennia in those depthless pools, for within their bounds swirled constellations born from star-crossed lovers, tryst and tragedy alike, her cosmic map charting destinies intertwined like vines around Eldritch's gnarly branches. Her soul was a beacon of light amidst the encroaching dusk, her essence as much part of this sacred ground as stone had been laid eons ago to form its hallowed foundation or living monument that transcended mere physicality and embodied their shared guardianship with every heartbeat. As they stood there in contemplation, the grove seemed alive around them. It breathed beneath their feet as though each footfall was a note within an eternal symphony composed by nature itself, for melody that resonated through bark and soil alike wherein lay Eldritch's heart. The roots of ancient trees twisted about the grove like serpents seeking to protect, encircling them in their embrace, as if inviting these chosen ones closer into its hidden depths. Yet they knew that some secrets were not meant for mortal eyes alone and would forever remain shrouded within this emerald cocoon of life. The stars began appearing overhead like the scattered remnants of a day's last light, their twinkling as familiar to Malchus as his own reflection in still water Celeste's zero-isle ballet that had danced above them since time immemorial and would continue long after they were gone. These guardians understood well enough that while the heavens may turn with ceaseless cycles of birth, death, rebirth, yet their journey was not bound by mere orbits, but rather a voyage upon eternal seas wherein each wave bore echoes from realms both near and distant, or sea as vast within itself containing depths unfathomable to those who dared only look. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying with it whispers of ancient wisdom, tales told by ancestors whose voices had been lost in time's relentless march but now reached out like fingers from beyond veils unseen, or constant reminder that while their task was monumental and ever-changing as seasons themselves unfolded before them. And yet Malchus felt a warmth within his heart at Eleanor's side. It stemmed not only from shared purpose but also the profound realization of interconnectedness amongst all life, a reminder that in guarding Eldritch's sanctity they too were safeguarding something greater, an essence as vital to existence itself. For beneath this grove's protective embrace lay a heartbeat far older than either could fathom. Its pulses echoed through every stone and stream. In Chapter 20, after many such nights spent under this ancient guardianship, and as dawn approached on their restless eve of vigilance beside Eleanor's side beneath Eldritch's protective embrace, Malchus felt the weight of eternity pressing upon his shoulders. It was then that they heard a subtle rustling not from within the sacred grove, but just beyond its threshold, where mankind had built their abodes and castles against time's relentless tide. The source seemed to be as distant as the stars themselves, yet it grew louder with each passing moment, an ethereal melody that hummed through Eldritch's veins like a call of untold mysteries and forgotten realms of siren song for those who dared heed its ancient tunes. Eleanor, whose soul was as intricately woven with the fabric of this grove's essence as any guardian before her, lifted Malchus, gaze to meet hers, an unspoken understanding passing between them that transcended words, their shared purpose not merely a duty but a sacred communion, with each note played by invisible hands upon strings spun from the very silk of time itself. They were reminded once again why their existence as guardians was intertwined with Eldritch's silent plea for salvation, an odyssey that had begun long before them and would continue beyond, when memory faded to dust. The gentle breeze carried the essence of this forgotten melody into Malchus' heart, stirring within him a yearning not just for adventure but also an awakening. His spirit began to untangle itself from its earthly bindings and soar upon wings woven by dreams. As they stood together beneath Eldritch's timeless boughs, the guardians felt their connection deep in a resonance that transcended mere companionship or duty, as each heartbeat mirrored a pulse from this primal entity which cradled them in its bosom. And yet, amidst such reverence for life and purpose lay an undercurrent of something else, one often whispered about but seldom felt until nowhere longing to understand the language of stars that had guided their ancestors across generations as much as it did on this night when fate seemed poised at their doorstep. Through Eldritch's roots and branches they sensed an ancient wisdom flow like sap through veins, or knowledge passed down from the guardians of yore, whose hands once danced upon these same leaves to celebrate cycles completed in harmony with celestial bodies that had watched over them for eons. The grove itself seemed alive beneath their feet, and as they moved silently among its sentient stones, Malchus felt a part of the world's unseen Weber tapestry, where every thread was an act or thought contributing to the grand design woven by nature's handmaidens. The melody grew more insistent now, not just in their ears but beating strongly within each pulse that had brought them here, compelling Malchus and Aliana forward on a path unseen yet felt as surely as if drawn from the very core of Eldritch itself, her journey through time's embrace where past met present. In this sacred space between worlds they knew their bond was not simply with one another, but also to something far greater than themselves, an entity that watched over life's delicate balance like a benevolent deity whose favor rested in the hands of those who respected its sanctity and defended it from harm. And just as this realization settled within their hearts, they were joined by other guardians drawn to Eldritch's call across lands unseen, where myth intertwined with reality like vines along ancient walls. Their presence added strength not only to Malchus' spirit, but also fortified the collective resolve of all who had gathered here. A silent pact sealed without words, yet heard in shared purpose and understanding that transcended time itself, for their mission was an enduring one, or vigil as old as Eldritch's own whispered secrets. As they stood shoulder to shoulder with these kindred spirits of heartbeats echoing through stone and stream alike, the melody reached a crescendo that seemed almost tangible in its fervor, an urgent yet soothing call for guardians whose souls were as intertwined within Eldritch's embrace. And with each note played upon invisible instruments of fate itself, their dance was one not merely to protect but in chapter 21, as Eldritch's twilight song continued to weave through the ancient groves of Ionian woods, where reality faded into legend and myth was nourished by truth's essence. A gentle breeze carried whispers from every leaf and petal. The guardians stood rooted in unity amidst this natural sanctum, or testament to their unwavering commitment. Eldritch's presence resonated with the soul of each protector, as if they had been chosen by destiny itself, anointed through sacred rites only known within these hallowed grounds, where time seemed a mere suggestion rather than rule. Malchus felt his heart swell like sails in stormy seas. He and Aloro were not just companions, but threads interwoven into the very fabric of this existence, their shared purpose that bound them beyond their earthly lives, which they now knew to be transient shadows upon Eldritch's eternal light. Their reflections merged in still waters beneath willow boughs, two spirits acknowledging a kinship far deeper than flesh could fathom or love's language convey, silent communion between guardians of the threshold, custodians appointed by unseen hands to uphold an invisible barrier betwixt worlds. As if ordained long ago, when stars first spilled across night's canvas and myth sprouted from humanity's yearning for wonderment beyond its immediate grasp, Eldritch had whispered the name of these guardians, their sacred charge bestowed upon them to maintain harmony within this liminal space. The guardian council they formed bore witness not only to their solemn oath but also echoed it back through time's corridors as a promise kept without falter, an unbroken lineage safeguarding the threshold between what was and could bear sacred duty inherited from ancient custodians whose names were lost like sand slipping through fingers in perpetual motion. Their pact became more than words. It transcended spoken vows to form a bond of shared resolve that mingled with Eldritch's essence, as if their very breath matched the ancient wind, and time itself paused its march while they stood firm against forces unseen yet ever present, with each heartbeat resonating through stone paths where dragon had once soared and stream sang tales of olden times when gods walked among men's sacred ground beneath footsteps that sought to protect a world not entirely their own. The guardians felt an intertwining with Eldritch's spirit. They understood now what Malchus could never have conveyed in speech. They were part of something vast and eternal, where every whisper carried weight like golden leaves upon autumn's breath, a responsibility that demanded more than strength but a harmony between their wills, as if the very pulse within them synchronized with Eldritch's silent symphony. Alara saw in Malchus not just an ally to be shared beneath moonlit skies and sun-drenched fields, where wildflowers danced like spirits free of earth-bound chains or connection that seemed as natural as the flowing river or the turning seasons, which Eldritch nurtured. Through unspoken understandings, guardians learned to read each other's intentions not through words but in shared glances and knowing smiles, a language born of trust forged within this crucible, where reality faded into myth or place beyond ordinary comprehension, yet as real to them now. As the sun dipped below the Ionian woods, casting golden hues upon their sacred mission, like threads spun from celestial fires that would be woven through history's tapestry forevermore. They knew this was not an end, but a beginning or chapter within chapters of guardianship, whose tales were scribed in the heartbeat of existence itself. For these custodians, their dance with destiny had become as intricate and vital to life's continuum as rivers meet oceans or stars guide sailors through tempests, a perpetual vigil where courage melded into compassion or bond that resonated beyond the veils of worlds. The melody reached its zenith within their unity, not just in defiance against darkness but in affirmation to preserve light itself for all who had yet dreamt beneath twilight's embrace and dawn's tender promise, a call so profound that it shaped the very essence of what they were meant to be. In this realm where time folded upon itself like origami swans gliding across still waters, Malchus found within Alara not just eyes reflect in a realm where shadows held whispers of ancient secrets and twilight kissed every corner with mysteries untold. Malchus stood at Ionian Wood's edge, place he had come to revere as his sanctum since childhood. The woods were alive today. Trees rustled their approval in the gentle breeze that flowered through them like a soft melody meant only for him and Alara, who shared an unspoken language of respect born from countless battles fought side by side against encroaching darkness and adversary both tangible and spectral. Today's mission was sacred, to seal away the malevolent wraith that sought once more to plunge their world into eternal night, a shadow too persistent for even centuries of guardianship to vanquish alone. The air itself seemed thick with purpose as Malchus and Alara made camp beneath twisted boughs whose gnarled limbs had been witnesses to eons of silent vigilance by those who'd come before them, custodians bound together in the eternal dance between light and shadow, hopefulness rooted deep within their shared spirit. The night sky was a canvas painted with stars that seemed more numerous tonight. Each one blinked like eyes full of ancient knowledge, as Malchus felt his resolve strengthen her quiet assurance from unseen forces, guiding him toward this destiny-woven path he had yet to fully understand, but somehow knew would be forever etched into the chronicles of their world. His hand found Alara's beside, a touch lighter than before, not because they feared what might come with dawn's light revealing new challenges, for in this realm where time wove itself like threads through needles and tapestries alike, fear was but the beginning of understanding. Alara watched him intently as her own eyes mirrored his determination. She knew well that every seal Malchus forged tonight would reverberate into 1,000 tomorrow felt in laughter at playgrounds and weary sighs overlooking the sunset's hues. As they embarked upon their final confrontation, her spirit intertwined with his like vines around an ancient tree trunk, each of them understanding that while battles were fought within these woods, it was love for one another and all who dwelled beneath twilight's embrace and dawn's gentle promise that fueled their indomitable will. Malchus stepped forward as the wraith materialized before him, its form a dark tapestry of void where light refused to touch, eyes that held not sight but malice itself. Alara drew her blade with measured grace and whispered an incantation older than words or melody, from their shared legacy passed down through generations, uncountable. The air shimmered around them as the very essence of night sought resistance in Malchus's heart. Yet he stood his ground, not because it was a fight for survival, but to protect an endless cycle where guardianship and vulnerability were eternal companions along life's journey, or promise made under their stars. With every strike from her blade that danced in harmony with Malchus's, the wraith faltered, its existence a testament not just to darkness but also fear itself, which they knew only after it had been dispelled by acts of courage interwoven with compassion could ever truly vanish. The seal was broken, a victory that felt less like conquest and more as though Malchus stood at the threshold between worlds where dreamers found solace in twilight's embrace, their aspirations a lantern against night's abyss. It wasn't merely about wielding power, but preserving hope itself. As they sealed away what once threatened to consume all that was good and beautiful within these woods, the wraith dissolved into whispers of darkness only heard by those who had learned the language spoken in silence between guardianship souls such as theirs. Understanding it forged resilience, not just against evils, but also fear itself. With one final look at Alara's determined eyes that sparkled with stories yet to unfold beneath her own skin, very sane tales written into each heartbeat of existence they aimed to safeguard. Malchus knew this chapter was far from over. It would evolve as unpredictably and beautifully as the dawn itself. In a realm where shadows sought whispers, his whisper became one with her own and promises for tomorrow's light that might yet outshine even their brightest aspirations. Her symphony of silent prayers to keep in chapter 23, as Malchus and Alara stood together under a sky painted with hues of dawn's first light. Their journey continued to unfold her testament to bravery that transcended mere survival into something profoundly hopeful. The forest around them seemed to sigh in relief at the quietus it had endured for too long. Each leaf and branch danced with newfound vitality, as though rejoicing alongside their own spirits, intertwined by shared trials of heartache and triumph alike. The air itself carried a subtle warmth that day, a gentle reminder that the world was still filled with wonder despite its shadows. As they walked hand in hand along paths worn yet resilient as nature's own, Malchus noticed how each step Alara took mirrored his resolve. Their unity had become an unspoken bond of companionship and mutual protection against any threat that dared encroach upon the sanctity of these woods. As they ambled onward toward a clearing where mists still clung to ancient stones, Malchus felt within him a burgeoning lighter beacon kindled by Alara's unwarranted zero-baited strength and courage that had carried them through seasons both harsh and gentle into this moment of peace. The very ground seemed imbued with their shared fortitude. It was as though the earth itself acknowledged her part in protecting these woods, ensuring its beauty remained a testament to guardians who loved deeply enough, not only for themselves, but also out of reverence for all life within and around them. Within this clearing, now bathed in soft sunlight that played hide and seek with the lingering fog, they paused, the world outside forgotten, as their gaze met over a shared cup steaming between green tea leaves and hot water from Alara's cherished family recipe pot. They sipped slowly, savoring not just each other's company but also this simple pleasure of life that had seemed lost to them until fate intervened in ways unimaginable mere weeks ago. A silent communion shared between souls now felt like an affirmation and acknowledgement that love and hope were the most potent weapons against darkness. Their conversation flowered into tales spun from past adventures, of friends made under starlit skies who had once been strangers but found solace in each other's hearts, stories sewn together with threads both bitter and sweet like a tapestry depicting the human condition itself. Alara spoke often about her grandmother's tales that seemed to come alive whenever she recounted them, as if listening was an act of summoning spirits from folklore who danced in candlelight during festive nights and whispered wisdom into troubled ears seeking comfort against the encroaching dusk. In these stories lay lessons learned, a reflection on how strength often emerged not just through acts but also kindness, for even among those with malice at heart were moments of vulnerability that sought to be acknowledged and embraced before being healed or vanquished forever from the narrative's course. Elora shared anecdotes about a time when compassion had turned adversaries into allies. She spoke in hushed tones as though afraid her words might awaken spirits whose memories lingered long after they departed this realm, their legacy embodied within the very fabric of these woods. As Malchus listened to Elora's tales, woven with nostalgia and love for a world that had once been whole before it was torn asunder by forces unseen, but felt deeply understood something vital about existence. Hope could never be extinguished when hearts beat in sync, pulsating through the veins of every living being touched gently yet indelibly. It became clear to him now that their mission transcended simple guardianship over realms and relics, but was instead an endeavor towards nurturing a world where empathy could flourish even in places marred by the scars of past tragedies, forging new beginnings with every sunrise. As they stood shoulder to shoulder at day's end within this sacred space, surrounded by ancient trees and whispered secrets only guardians knew too well, their reflections merged into one confluence where human spirit met nature's embrace, offering solace in the knowledge that no shadow was so deep it could not be pierced with light born of love. The forest seemed to lean closer, as if eagerly awaiting tomorrow's promises. They whispered together, a promise carved into every leaf and stone, thou etched within their souls her testament. Malchus and Elora stood in silence atop a gentle hill that overlooked an expanse of whispering woods, their breaths mingling with mist as they exhaled deeply into twilight's embrace. The world below seemed paused within the delicate balance between nightfall's calm and dawn's pronocer tableau vivant beneath the canvas of stars that had witnessed countless such moments through time immemorial, echoing with tales only guardians like themselves could tell without speaking a word aloud. As we've come to learn, Elora murmured, her voice carrying more weight than it ever did before as she traced the gnarled bark of an ancient oak beside them. This forest is not just our sanctuary. These woods are testament and teach her living history that has cradled souls since eons past. Malchus nodded in agreement while pondering on her words. The guardians understood the gravity of their shared responsibility well beyond mere watchfulness over relics or realms held at bay by arcane energies and hidden threats. They were custodians, not only preservers an unspoken covenant with nature itself that bound them to safeguard empathy amidst the tumult of a wounded world. As night deepened around them, Malchus began recounting tales he had heard since childhood from his grandmother's lips, and Elora shared stories passed down through her lineage, each narrative threaded with love for their lost civilization that once danced in harmony within these woods. The guardians knew of the great tragedies, wars fought not by armies, but waged between brother against brother under cover of nightfall. They had seen societies crumble when empathy faltered, and forgotten how to speak kindled hearts so lost amidst cacophonies rise. To mend what was broken, we must first listen. Malchus spoke softly as Elora joined him by the fire pit they had gathered around earlier that evening while sharing kindling with woodland spirits unseen yet felt in their roots, and levisser communion ancient beyond reckoning where guardians once sought wisdom. Their shared stories continued well into what should have been a moonless night, when suddenly Malchus paused. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as though awaiting his next word with bated anticipation that mirrored Elora's heartbeat, her synchronized pulse of life between man and nature. There is one tale I've held close for far too long, he confessed, a rare vulnerability creeping into his voice as memories surged like ripples across water's surface after the fall of an errant pebble or time when empathy was currency and kindness wealth. It is one that I fear has faded from my own heart. Listen to me, Malchus, Elora replied tenderly as her hand found his in a gentle clasp atop the ground they had shared beneath their feet for so many seasons, her touch lighter than time itself, and yet heavy with unshed emotions. Empathy lives within us all like seeds waiting to bloom. We need only remember how it felt when our world was whole. In that instant, Malchus understood the path he had wandered Astraean Odyssey through life's tempestuous sea, where his anchor of empathy lay submerged beneath layers of indifference and misunderstanding. The guardians knew well how to navigate turbulent waters. They were navigators in a world that often forgot its own compass needle, spinning aimlessly without the gentle tugging back from nature's verdant hand or whispered wisdom carried by wind-borne leaves. Our ancestors spoke of the hearth. Elora continued with reverence as Malchus listened to her voice weave threads into his soul. a sacred place within this forest where empathy and hope were forged in the crucible of unity. She paused briefly before resuming. There is a lesson hereon that binds our leggers 0ns together across time's divide. The ancient oaks stood sentinel, bearing witness to their communion as they spoke into each other's souls and shared the essence of empathy rekindled from within. It was a journey inward, an odyssey back through memories that painted hues upon the canvas of Malchus' spirit. He saw himself not merely standing but walking alongside Alora, hand in hand down paths untrodden yet familiar. As they wove their stories into existences, Alora approached him cautiously yet gently as he turned to her with a weary smile and eyes brimming not just from sleep but also with newfound clarity, reflecting upon their shared journey of rediscovery through empathetic understanding that had begun in the sacred hearth under those mighty oaks. She settled next to him on the other armrest as she extended her hand for a comforting touch and whispered words soaked in warm sunlight. We are woven into this tapestry of life, each thread essential. Your own journey intertwines with mine. Malchus accepted her presence like an old melody that he'd forgotten but was now remembering. The library around them held the scent of ancient leather and silent knowledge as Alora recounted tales handed down from their ancestors, stories steeped in understanding for one another's heartbeats, a legacy they had both lost touch with until today, when hope flickered anew like a lone star piercing night's veil. As she spoke of the hearth and its significance as more than just tales, but actuality, Malchus felt himself being enveloped by empathy's tender shade and emotional reawakening that seeped into his very marrow with each word Alora shared from their heritage. Their ancestors did not simply speak. They lived in unity and understanding as one organism within a forest where even the wind seemed to carry whispers of consensus between all living beings under its breaths. Alora's narrative unfurled like an ancient scroll detailing rituals that bonded souls through shared experiences, or time when people looked beyond mere appearances and delved into each other's essence, finding common ground in the rich tapestry of their emotions, rather than differences to divide. She spoke fervently about how empathy was not just a virtue, but an essential life force that flowed through generations like vital currents coursing beneath bark and soil, a sacred pulse within them all, often lost yet always present, waiting for reclamation by the willing heart. Malchus listened with rapt attention as he allowed himself to be transported back in time into this world of empathy's power, where understanding was a common tongue spoken fluently amongst humans and nature alike, a utopia within reach if only one chose it, but for too long forgotten amidst the chaos that had ensnared his spirit. As night fell upon their sacred meeting place in this realm of storytelling and remembrance, Malchus realized he was not just recalling tales from a bygone era. They were rediscovered fragments within himself, a personal renaissance triggered by Alora's touch that had awakened dormant truths buried underneath 0wn layers of indifference. The brook outside sang its age-old lullaby, and with every soothing note resonating through the air, Malchus felt the rekindling ember within his chest, a warmth spreading outward, as if he were standing in the hearth once more, but now awakened. Together they sat embraced by ancient boughs and cradled by an understanding that transcended mere words. Their souls had found a kindred spirit amidst the echoes of empathy's call, where every heartbeat was in sync with nature's own rhythm or symphony composed within these hallowed grounds. Alora shared more narratives as she traced her fingers along Malchus' arm and described how their forebears had not just built a physical hearth, but also one of the spirit that could be found in each heart willing to listen, learn, and love deeply, or sanctuary, where empathy was cherished like precious gems mined from souls. Together they wove their own stories into existence's tapestry as Alora's tales seamlessly intertwined with Malchus' experiences of the world beyond the hearth, each acknowledging that while one may be lost in a tempestuous sea at times, empathy and hope were like lighthouses guiding them back to safe harbors. Their conversations danced between past memories and visions for what their united spirits could bring forth into the world or future, where humanity reclaimed its ability to feel deeply as one with nature. In chapter 26 of their shared journey through time and spirit, Alora sat beside Malchus once more as he gazed out over the hearth, ancient grounds where they first discovered each other's souls intertwined like roots in rich earth. With the sky painted with strokes from a tired day's end to its last whisper of twilight blue, Alora began spinning tales once more around them by his side beneath the hearth's wise old trees, whose leaves had danced together for centuries before their meeting at this very spot or time when hearts were as open and full as the sky above. Malchus, she started softly with a voice that carried both warmth from her belly to his ear. Do you remember how we first came upon the hearth? She traced delicate circles on his palm before recounting tales of their ancestors who had long since returned to the earth. They spoke in hushed reverence as Alara painted pictures with words, images that were not just reflections but echoes from past and present, converging into a shared memory or communion, where each story was like water droplets merging on leaves before raining down together upon the hearth's ancient stones. There once lived two souls who sought to understand the essence of empathy, Alara continued as Malchus listened, his eyes mirroring her sentimental glow. They found each other not by chance but through a confluence within their spirits or kindred resonance that drew them into one another's existence like waterways meeting in an unseen estuary. As she spoke of the days when the hearth was naught but land and trees, Malchus closed his eyes. With each story Alara shared about how her family had cultivated not just crops from this soil but also seeds of compassion that bloomed into acts of kindness with every season's turn. He imagined himself walking those same paths alongside his kin centuries ago and felt the warmth in their unity. The empathy we found within the hearth is not merely a feeling but an experience, a testament to our lineage, who believed that understanding each other's hearts was as vital as knowing how to till this land. Alara said with conviction and pride, "It's the reason why my great-great-grandparents built the hearth, not just for shelter, but also a place where souls could find solace in one another, creating bonds that transcended time." Malchus nodded slowly as he considered how his own family had similarly sought refuge and connection within the world beyond a realm rife with discord, yet holding space for understanding when least expected. His mother's stories of travelers who found brief respite in distant lands, exchanging tales that sowed empathy amidst strangers as if planting seeds upon fertile ground, and his father's accounts of the oceans he sailed at, or vast expanse where one might feel lost but also find unexpected kinship with foreign shores. Together they remembered their own encounters that had led them here, Alara recounting a time when she wandered into the hearth seeking solace and found not just comfort in the company of trees, but an audience to her soul's whisperings. Malchus sharing his encounter with strangers whose eyes, burdened by sorrow's weight, opened up under their shared silence, their communion that spoke volumes. As night approached stealthily on its usual canvas-like journey across the sky, Alara and Malchus delved deeper into tales of empathy's power, how it had guided them to each other like a beacon in foggy waters or provided strength when their own hearts felt as if they were made of glass. They spoke not only with words, but through shared glances that communicated volumes, acknowledging the silent symphony playing out between heartbeats or rhythms set by the hearth itself and its eternal embrace around them like a cloak woven from threads spun from understanding's loom. "Malchus," Alara murmured as her voice lulled him further into the night's tender narrative, "imagine with me an interconnected world where every heartbeat aligns in harmony, a place where empathy is not just felt, but lived and treasured like nature's own breath." Their conversation was a dance of memories past and dreams yet to come. As Malchus listened, he began to see himself within Alara's stories. He saw their journey together mirrored in the legends his family had passed down a line as they nestled into their shared embrace of silken pillows and threads spun from nighttime whispers. Alara continued to weave tales that transcended time itself, painting a picture where hearts beat in unison under the hearth's watchful gaze. In the silence between them she began her narrative, a more chapter yet unfolding with dreamlike fluidity as they found themselves transported back into ancient times, when empathy was revered like sacred flame within human connections. In this world, where understanding flowered in every interaction and compassion echoed through the very air, Alara spoke of the hearth, an entity not unlike their own souls, that had always been a part of them but now seemed to pulse with an inviting glow around her fingertips. Malchus found himself drawn into this storytelling journey as his hands rested lightly on hers, both finding solace in the rhythmic undulation. They felt her physical manifestation of empathy and connection reverberating between them like a heartbeat that synchronized perfectly with their own. Malchus remembered tales from his ancestors about the hearth, how it had been said to be born when two hearts, separated by distance yet bound by destiny's thread, found solace in each other's presence and strength through silent understanding, a testament to empathy that transcended the physical realm. As Alara narrated these stories, with eyes closed against her eyelashes, heavy as velvet curtains draping over their shared repose, Malchus felt himself becoming part of this timeless saga, each word a brushstroke on his own canvas painted by memory and emotion intermingled. Alara's voice took them deeper into the heart's symphony, where they learned that the hearth did not just exist, but thrived in places touched by genuine compassion, spreading its warmth like sunlight across a dew-kissed meadow at dormant world awakening with every shared empathy. She spoke of how this interconnectedness had once been the foundation upon which societies were built, where conflicts faded and peace was as palpable as the air they breathed, all because hearts listened to one another's silent pleas for understanding without judgment or fear, like a harmonious chorus sung by countless voices united in melody. As she painted this world of empathy with her storytelling, Malchus could see himself as part of the legacy passed down through generations within his family, tales spun from threads that held truths about unity and love's power to heal all wounds, even those etched by time itself. The stories spoke not just of past heroes, but of everyday individuals whose lives were touched profoundly when they reached out with kindness, listening carefully for the whisperings in each other's hearts, finding strength within vulnerability that had always been their greatest gift, and blessing underneath it a lack treasure as valuable as gold. Alara's tales grew to a crescendo where she spoke of the hearth not just as an entity, but also as the embodiment of empathy itself, enveloping each person in its loving warmth like a cloak woven from threads spun by understanding's own hand. She shared how this bond had been their gift to one another, a testament to trust and intimacy forged through years spent together under starlit skies, watching the world unfold, feeling it all with every fiber of her beingers, if they could reach out into infinity itself in search of answers, or simply reveling within each other's presence. And as Alara's narrative drew to a close for this nightly chapter beneath the hearth's watchful gaze, Malchus felt the weight of their shared stories meld together like watercolors blending on canvas, or living masterpiece painted by empathy's brush. They found themselves within tales they had only ever imagined as children under a blanket fort in his mother's attic, where whispers between siblings echoed through the rafters, and dreaming hands held each other's with promises of eternal understanding or bond that time could not erode. Their shared journey within Alara's stories became less a passage into what was past or might yet come to be, but rather an acknowledgment of all they had encountered together along their path thus far. Every memory and dream, each whispered longing for comprehension, woven with threads so fine that it seemed as though the fabric itself could mend any tear in its weave. Malchus learned that empathy, as Malchus and Alara's fingers intertwined like roots seeking sustenance in fertile soil beneath the hearth, they felt an undeniable sense of serenity envelop them, a calm that only true companionship can bring on a night such as this. Above the hearth's flickering flames danced shadows that played out scenes from Alara's stories, remnants of their shared childhood in her mother's attic now blossomed into reality before Malchus' very eyes. The room was filled with a golden glow as the fire cast its warm embrace over them both, and they reveled not only in each other's company, but also within Alara's vivid retellings of their past misadventurous wayward journey through an enchanted forest, where lightning revealed hidden pathways to lost souls seeking home. They laughed as the tales spun tighter loops, taking them back and forth across time like a pendulum swinging with memories in its arc. Malchus listened intently as Alara whispered of days spent chasing will-o'-the-wisps that led to forgotten lakes where they had learned the art of silence, so profound it seemed even their thoughts ceased within earshot, and he marveled at how these recollections seamlessly melded into each other. The stories became an intricate tapestry, much like a second skin unsheathed in emotions that swelled with every beat of the heart. They were tales not just told, but felt deep inside bones, chilling from winter's touch, or blooming under spring's tender caress. Each story was imbued with love and loss, as Alara recounted her grandmother's final basin, elegant woman whose wisdom seemed etched into the very woodwork of the hearth itself. Her stories were threads that weaved through their own lives, embroidering each memory upon the fabric they shared, a cloth rich with textures both bright and dulled by time's relentless march forward, yet untouched in its integrity because of their presence here tonight bound it together. As Malchus wrapped an arm around Alara, he felt his own heartbeat slowing to match the rhythm that had pulsed between them since they were children playing under a moonlit sky where dreams soared as high and far-reaching as eagles in flight, a time when everything seemed possible within their grasp. And even now it did, for the hearth bore witness to an unfolding chapter of healing with its embers' steady glow, guiding them through a labyrinth where every turn revealed new facets of one another's character and soul. Shadows cast by the fire played on their faces like watercolors blending under skilled strokes or living masterpiece painted in earnest conversation. The night air whispered secrets, but within these walls they shared without fear or reserve as the hearth hummed a lullaby of its own creation, one where the past was not merely recounted, but relived with affectionate touches that spoke volumes more than words ever could. Alara's tales drew Malchus into their very essence, and he saw himself within her ice not as another soul to join in this dance of remembrance, but rather a vessel through which the depths they had discovered together were magnified under the hearth's watchful gaze. Their shared journey wove between now and then with threads so fine that it felt time itself was mended, creating an eternal present wherein every whispered longing for understanding became a promise of future explorations or pledge to never lose themselves in the labyrinthine folds of their intertwined histories. In this haven sanctified by the hearth's flames and tales, Malchus learned that empathy was not just an act, but an experience, one where understanding reached beyond words spoken or unspoken, a symphony composed in the language of shared vulnerability within which they found solace. Alara's stories did more than merely recount their lives together. Each word and gesture painted strokes on the hearth's canvas, revealing not only a history but also glimpses into what could yet come to bear future, where the love that had kindled between them would continue undimmed by time's erosion. As they lay side by side beneath this ancient hearth, which now seemed as much an altar of their joined spirits, Malchus understood at last how the hearth's embers were akin to the spark within his heart, or under the hearth's warm glow, and amidst tales that span centuries of human history, Malchus found himself lost in a reverie with Alara beside him, her stories painting vibrant pictures against which their shared future was to be envisioned. As he listened intently, the weighty past seemed less like an anchor dragging them down and more like wind beneath their wings propelling towards horizons yet unseen. In this tranquil space, where time held no sway over hearts that beat as one under the hearth's watchful eye, they both felt a sense of timelessness. Each word Alara spoke was not just an echo, but also a melody playing on the strings of their intertwined fates. It wasn't long before Malchus began to understand how empathy had become more than mere kindness. It grew into something tangible, like warmth that could be felt through one's skin and heard in his bones. With every story Alara wove from memory, threads dyed in the hues of their experiences. Tonight's tale took them back to a village where they had first met years ago, a place drenched now only by moonlight, yet still as familiar as if it were yesterday, when her laughter and his heartbeat merged into one harmonic rhythm beneath the stars above an ancient oak. It was here that their love story began in earnest, amidst celebration for a bountiful harvest season or time of plenty, where hope blossomed like wildflowers along cobbled streets lined with quaint wooden houses painted in pastels, each window reflecting the warmth within and casting patterns onto the hearth's surface. Alara had narrated how she felt when they first locked eyes, her curious combination of fear and exhilaration. It was as though her gaze held galaxies yet to be explored together, while also being a mere spark in the vastness of shared dreamscape, much like the hearth's embers before igniting into flame. Malchus could still feel that tingling sensation down his spine whenever he closed his eyes and recalled her words as if they were imbued with magic, a spell to transport him back through time's relentless march, yet feeling anchored here where the present melded seamlessly into their past. As Malchus listened more deeply, Alara continued telling of nights spent under the hearth's amber glow while they learned from one another how she had shared her tales and he his knowledge about ancient histories that predate even the oldest stones upon which this very village stood. How their hands brushed in passing yet became entwined when united by desire for understanding. The stories transitioned to days of exploration, wherein they discovered not just each other, but also themselves, how Malchus came to understand Alara's silent strength and her capacity to love without reservation, how he learned from the rhythms she danced to in celebration or mourned with under the hearth's summer flames. Their journey was punctuated by shared laughter, tears shed together over forgotten melodies hummed beneath the hearth's embrace during times of both joy and sorrow. It became a sacred pilgrimage where every memory they uncovered added to their mosaic history a tableau vivid that no storm could erode. Within the comforting folds around them, Elora's voice softened as she delved into tales of love lost and found elsewhere in time's tapestry, stories where the hearth had been both witness to tragedy and celebration or constant companion that bore silent testimony to humanity's resilience. Yet for Malchus, these narratives were not mere echoes from the past, but rather lighthouses guiding them towards a future unmarred by regret or sorrow, instead illuminating their shared path forward with steadfast luminescence of hope and mutual respect that had been kindled in this very hearth. As night deepened, Malchus felt his heart swell at the thought of what was yet to come, a future where they would continue weaving tales together around the hearth's warm embrace, stories still untold, waiting with bated breath for their tender craftsmanship that could only emerge from souls intertwined. Their shared history had sculpted them, much like the potter who molds clay upon his wheel, steadily and patiently shaping two individuals into a single vessel of understanding where every moment spent together became part of an intricate design. They were creating peace by